I'm a four-time Olympian in diving and I'm an Olympic silver and bronze medalist. Innovation is breaking the boundaries of what you think is possible. I own 3 businesses. I think the most important skill would have to be resilience, and I think that's one thing that I really enjoy is that challenge of continuing to grow and push your limits. Dive into your innovation at the Sydney Innovation Festival.
Hello, my name is Craig Madden. I'm a proud Bundjalung Gadigal man from the Eora Nation. I'm here at Sydney University on Gadigal land. Jinyura Gadigal, this land is Gadigal. It's customary for Aboriginal people to invite guests or visitors onto our land or country. It's a custom that we've been doing for thousands of years. I'd like to pay my respects to our elders, past, present and emerging, to any visitors from any other nations or countries, to all our non-Aboriginal brothers and sisters, a warm and sincere welcome to Gadigal land, Aboriginal land. The Gadigal clan is one of 29 clans which make up the Eora Nation. It's a nation that's bound by 3 distinct landmarks. So we have the Hawkesbury River to the north, the Nepean River to the west, and the Georges River to the south. Within the confines of those mighty rivers lie the Eora Nation, and the land of the Gadigal people that we stand on are one of the 29 clans of that nation. So on behalf of our Gadigal mob, I'd like to say welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I am currently on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I further acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which you are and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Welcome staff, students, entrepreneurs, innovators and everyone else watching to the 2021 Sydney Innovation Festival. This festival is designed to introduce the university community to innovation opportunities and the entrepreneurial mindsets of thought leaders from both inside and outside the University of Sydney. My name is Nicholas Stevens and I'm the MC for today's program. Today's program is composed of 4 sections, including our keynote panel right now, Innovation for Planet Earth, that discusses the role innovation plays in sustaining our existence. Number 2, the Your Wellbeing Innovative panel, which shows how the pandemic has impacted Australian livelihoods and what innovators are doing to assist. Number 3, the It All Starts With an Idea workshop, run by the university's Incubate and Genesis teams. And finally, our 4th workshop, which is Thinking Commercially About Your Research, run by the Sydney Knowledge Hub. You will have had the opportunity to register for these when you received your invitation. If you have not registered but would like to join, we'll be sharing the links in the chat. As you are following along with this panel, if you have a question, please post it in the Q&A session of the chat. If you see a question you like, give it a thumbs up. We'll be answering these questions at the end of the session. Now, it is with great honour that I introduce the University of Sydney's Chancellor, Belinda Hutchinson, to open day 2 of the Sydney Innovation Festival.
But look, welcome everyone to this festival. I think it's a great concept and a terrific idea. And just let me say, I'd like to pay my respects to the Gadigal people and just point out so importantly that innovation has been going on the lands of our university for tens of thousands of years through the Gadigal people and their times on these lands. And today, it's just a fantastic opportunity, I think, for our students to are beginning their innovation career journeys. And I'd like to really talk to you just very briefly about what that means and my experience at the university as Chancellor and what I've seen in terms of innovation journeys. First of all, I'd like to start by saying thank you to our panelists and presenters who are going to be with us today. Thank you very much for their time. My thanks also to Alex Carpenter from Genesis and Nina Jewell at Incubate for their work on our accelerator and innovation programs, and to Martin Tomish and to Nicholas Stevens from the Innovation Hub team for organising this event. All of these events take a lot of time to organise and a huge effort, so well done to you all. But I'd really like to introduce our panel, our first panel, which I think is a really special group of people. We have Mike Boyle, who's the Managing Director of HP Australia and New Zealand's operations. We have our very own Professor Thomas Maschmeyer, who was the winner of the 2020 Prime Minister's Innovation Prize, and Jessie Suskin, who is now the Head of Government Relations at Google Wings. And I understand that Jessie actually has had more than one wing to attend. He's also worked in the West Wing of the White House, which is pretty amazing, as the Associate Director of Communications. I'm sure he's got lots of stories from that. But the timing of this festival feels just right to me. The last 18 months, I know, has been particularly challenging in terms of uncertainty and isolation. And I know people have been really worried about how we'd come through COVID-19. Fortunately, we are now coming out the other end and the world is opening up. And there has been much innovation that I think we can be incredibly proud of. How extraordinary that we had our medical scientists around the world able to fast track, like never before, multiple vaccines to combat COVID-19. Businesses have pivoted online. Restaurants have moved to home delivery. Universities and schools have moved to online teaching. And our university in particular has been incredibly innovative. I think about the ventilators that our students and staff designed and developed within just a few months to help people in hospital, and also the imaging technology that we developed to help those to actually work out what was the real impact of disease on people's lungs. Then they're just two examples of things that have gone on at our university in the past 18 months. But I'm sure, like me, you're now keen to focus on the future. And moving into a post-pandemic world, it's time for new ideas to flourish, for risks to be re-evaluated, for opportunities to be seized. By coming to this festival, you are showing that you are eager to get your ideas off the ground and to make this world a better place. I would be preaching to the converted if I was to tell you all how important innovation is. But it is worth considering that the Group of 8 Universities analysis shows that for every dollar that we invest in research, there is more than $10 given back to the economy. And we spend billions of dollars a year, so the multiplier effect is enormous across the universities in this country. So university innovation, whether it be through our traditional research or whether it be through our students and their bright ideas, through, say, the Incubate program, through Genesis and the Student Innovation Awards, makes our society and our country richer for it. At the University of Sydney, we are lucky to have some of the best and brightest, and we have wonderful environment to create a space for people to think and to grow and to meet like-minded colleagues. There are many stories of success that I hear around our alumni, and one of the first that comes to mind is Nick Molnar, who was one of our Master of Commerce graduates and the co-founder of Afterpay. How amazing that he's just signed a merger deal with Square for $39 billion. Absolutely extraordinary. And we're just delighted that we have Afterpay's Executive Vice President Lee Harnett joining us for tomorrow's 1 p.m. session. So definitely be around for that one. I think it'll be fantastic. But if that level of success may seem just a little daunting, keep in mind that not all innovating alumni are commerce graduates and with money-making ideas. I'd like to give you another example, Anastasia Volkova, who I've met. She completed a PhD in autonomous drone navigation and has gone on to found Fluorosat, a company that helps farmers use data generated by drone technology to improve their crops. Her company now has clients all over the world, and with more than $8 million of investments, she's done really well. In fact, in 2020, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology listed her as one of the innovators under 35 years of age. As you'll find across this festival, the university has an ongoing commitment to providing our students with opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship education, and we will give you the support you need to spread your wings. There is no better time for you to try out your ideas than in the stimulating and inspiring environment of our university. Thank you all for coming today, and the best of luck in developing your ideas to fruition. And I'll now hand over the session to our keynote panel host, Lucy Lynn. Lucy is the founder of Forestlyn, which consults on technology, AI, data, and blockchain, all very important buzzwords in the innovation world. Lucy is an alumna of our university, and she also studied a Master of Commerce back in 2012 and was president of our Business Alumni Network. And thank you so much, Lucy Lynn, for hosting this session today. It'll be terrific, I know, and I'm looking forward to hearing it myself.
Thank you so much, Chancellor, for having me. I'm so glad to be here and really glad to be part of the Sydney Innovation Festival. So I want to talk about the title of the panel, which is Innovation for Planet Earth. And this is a topic that I'm really passionate about. And it's not just me. There has been a lot of drive from students and younger generations, such as Greta Thunberg and the Strike for Climate movement. And I, alongside 80,000 people, attended the climate rally 2 years ago. So why exactly have students in particular been concerned about the planet, and what is to be done within the academic, business and startup ecosystem to develop innovations that will be able to create a more sustainable and better world to live? To discuss these themes, we have a great panel of innovation thought leaders, including HP Australia and New Zealand's Managing Director, Mark Boyle, University of Sydney's Professor Thomas Maschmeyer, and Google's Wing, Jessie Suskin. Thank you so much for joining me. So, Mike, I'd love to start with you and your view. You're a key driver behind HP's partnership with Ocean Impact, Create Generation Impact, which empowers Australia's young innovators to transform the future of ocean health. Firstly, why do you think students in particular are so concerned about this topic, and what drove you to create this initiative?
Thanks very much, Lucy, and thanks everyone. Great opportunity to be here on the panel this afternoon. I think just to kick it off, research is always an important place to start in terms of, how we sort of delve in and look at these sorts of problems. And I think that maybe not a lot of people know that by 2050, plastic in our oceans will potentially outweigh fish. And this is such an important life support for planet Earth that we all know, and we've really got to be focused on doing something about it. Australians, on average, use about 130 kilos of plastic per person, and less than 12% of this is recycled. And unfortunately, 130,000 tonnes of this actually leaks into the ocean as well, which is around about 5 kilograms per person. So, it's clear that we've all got to act together, and I think that innovation is an important part of actually being part of the solution rather than creating the problem. I think the other thing we're seeing is obviously younger generations really see this as a key issue, and obviously around about 70% of younger generations now really are going to face the worst effects of this. And I think the other thing is, importantly, that these generations are really now starting to look at brands and sort of say, well, what are you going to do about it? And over 60% of younger generations now are really holding brands to account in terms of what they're doing. So we've been on this journey probably for 83 years at Hewlett-Packard, and now as we're known as HP. And because the oceans are so close to our heart, obviously 80% of us live close to the oceans, but importantly for those inland as well, it's all part of our whole ecosystem in terms of how we look at things. And so what we decided to do is to reach out to Ocean Impact organisation as rather than just sort of maybe throwing money at the problem, is throwing innovation at the problem. And Ocean Impact organisation's obviously been a powerhouse behind really thinking of ideas that are going to make a sustainable difference for us here in Australia. And They're there traditionally have been more for the more developed businesses to go from idea into mainstream businesses. So what we're going to be focusing on is our entrepreneurs to get a start and actually focus more at that sort of inception stage, and basically get finalists. We've got 8 finalists who are going to be coming forward. It was over 70 different entries. Come up with their great ideas, and we're going to help mentor, provide some funding for them to come up with new sustainable opportunity ideas for the future. And I'm really excited what we're going to see coming, and will be announced in the next few weeks ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think the Ocean Impact project and acceleration program sounds fantastic, and I hope you get a lot of great ocean ideas coming out of that. We're going to move next from the ocean to renewables. So, Professor Thomas, you've founded sustainable initiatives since 2001, and recently were awarded the 2020 Prime Minister's Prize for Innovation for Commercial Waste Recycling and for boosting the performance of renewable energy storage. Can you please explain your work and why you were recognised for that prize, and how it links to your motivation and mindset to solving such difficult problems?
Right, well, thanks very much. Thanks for allowing me to be here and sharing the time with all the interested students in particular. So the prize was given for 2 technologies. One, to actually help with the ocean cleanup. So it's a catalytic hydrothermal reactor technology able to take waste plastics, mixed waste plastics, which nobody can take at the moment, and make that into oils which can go back into the circular economy, but also renewable biomass waste that can be made into oils and then into renewable chemicals or renewable fuels, whatever the refineries are set up. So that was the first one, so clearly following on from the 9 kilos per person in the ocean, which is a terrible thing, and we hope to be able to change that. And we are connected with Dow, with Shell, with KBR, with Mitsubishi Chemicals, etc. So it's a global rollout. And the second one is Gelion, a battery company, and that battery technology allows us to be safe, to be able to operate at high temperature and be very robust. So particularly for Australia, in remote areas, standalone power systems, etc. It's a super good technology to replace diesel. Other batteries can't cope. And over time, we will roll out into the whole energy shifting stationary storage area. So helping to support the renewable transition. Also supporting hydrogen, because the electrolyzers run on solar or wind, and so that's intermittent. So the batteries can then help to run the electrolyzers when it's at night on the wind, and keep the expensive electrolyzers working all the time. So batteries are key to the hydrogen revolution as well. The question was, why did I do this? What's the focus? And to me, it's in a sense, I've had the privilege to go to one of the best universities in the country, in the world, and I feel I needed to use that to give back to society, try and make an impact. And my area, catalysis, means that I can really do that in terms of giving optionalities to society for different types of processes, different types of big problems, which often involve the making and breaking of chemical bonds, chemistry being a central science there. And for us to then really interact with that in a positive manner, reducing sustainable or increasing this sustainability and reducing negative impacts on climate.
So many things you're involved in, Professor Thomas. Like, I don't know how you sleep at night. We're going to go from the oceans and renewables now to the air and flight. And Jessie, for just over a decade, you worked at Google, and recently you moved into Google's Wing division. As a way of introduction, what's happening with Wing's drones in Canberra and also in Logan in Queensland, and how does this relate to sustainability?
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. I appreciate the question, and thank you for having me to the university. So Wing, for a few years now, has been offering a scaled drone delivery service in Canberra and in Southeast Queensland in Logan City. So we deliver thousands of packages every week using a 5-kilogram drone that flies autonomously. And particularly during the circumstances of the pandemic, as you can imagine, that's been quite busy. So we move convenience items that are about 1.5 kilos or less, and we move them across cities, usually within 10 kilometers out and back. And we have a few different models. Sometimes we locate our drones. We just announced one in Logan City last week where we have drones on the rooftop of a really busy shopping center delivering items for the center there. We have facilities where our merchants co-locate with us. Coffee is a really popular item we deliver. So at some of our facilities, we have local baristas who brew coffee exclusively for delivery by drone because we deliver tens of thousands of cups of coffee, as an example. To the innovative and the environmental piece, we really see this as taking cars off the road. A lot of the items we're delivering are items that people would have likely gotten in their cars to drive to the store to pick up themselves. So we're delivering to suburbs where people don't live walking distance to their local shops. So it's that whole roasted chicken for dinner, that children's Panadol, that liter of milk, hardware items, tools, items like that, where you yourself might have gotten in a car to move that item. We take that car trip off the road and add certainly a level of convenience for the merchants we deliver for and our customers. Furthermore, what the pandemic has also done, it's really changed behavior. And I don't think that behavior is going to shift back entirely once the circumstances of things like lockdowns adjust. So as an example, during the last Brisbane lockdown, we delivered about 4,500 packages. It was a short lockdown, I think about a 5 or a 7 day period. After that lockdown ends, though, when customers come on board to use the service, we see them continuing to do the same. So whether it's e-commerce, whether it's things like food delivery, or all forms of last mile delivery, they're going to keep taking place more and more in a system and an infrastructure that isn't very efficient and isn't really built for it. So, you know, the idea of using a sedan with 4 doors to move 500 grams of hamburger and fries 4 kilometers down the road, it's really not a great use of that car. It's really not a great use of energy. And by using drones to move that, as an example, we think will reduce vehicle kilometers and reduce emissions as well.
Yeah, I can't wait for it to come to Sydney where I am, because I went out shopping yesterday, forgot the butter, so I had to go back again, which is so unfortunate. So I think drone delivery is would be a very good use case for that example. It's very fascinating stuff. So if we go back to the ocean, and thanks so much for all your backgrounds and your areas of expertise. Now I'd love to talk about the Australian context versus how Australia is competing globally in developing some of our sustainable initiatives. So back to the ocean, Mike, you discussed earlier the clear intent of how students can be involved in some of these initiatives. So in your opinion, how are Australian companies doing to drive sustainable innovation for the ocean and reduce plastics, in your opinion?
Yeah, good question, Lucy. So look, I think, first of all, there's always more that business can be doing. I think we are seeing unprecedented action from organisations and individuals. And as I said a little bit earlier, you know, for people are holding business to account to do the right thing and make the right impact on the environment. And I think it's an exciting time in terms of innovation as we look forward to this. And in many ways, if I look at the Australian industry as such, in many ways, they're actually acting ahead of legislation, which is really great news. If you think worldwide, there's over 200 businesses that are now committed to achieving net zero carbon by 2040. And HP is one of those companies. And when we think of this, we've got to think about it from end to end. It's right from sustainable sourcing right down to, you know, how do we actually have a circular economy and maybe extend life of products and make sure that, you know, we're maximizing the use of everything. And all of these different things ultimately create less effect on the in the environment. To give you an example, the laptop that I'm using here in front of me today, actually the plastics, 70% of the plastics in this laptop are actually from recycled plastics. So it just shows how if you start to stitch the seams together in terms of how do you look at what you're producing, right from packaging through to innovation, there's lots of opportunities. And I think to Jesse's point a little bit around the other opportunity that technology can create, and a lot of people don't even realize this, but most of the books that you're ordering, if you're ordering online at the moment, most people sort of think that there's a magic warehouse sitting somewhere in Australia, and certainly if it's a common book, yes, there is a pallet of books sitting somewhere, but a big number of those books actually doesn't exist in a physical form, and that's just through advanced manufacturing. Literally, we've got presses that we produce that, you know, literally from digital form into your letterbox within about 5 days. That's another good example that you're not tying up inventory and wastage in terms of if things are not used and then recycled. And there's a statistic around about sort of 30-40% of books ultimately that go into mainstream print actually end up in pulp ultimately. And then finally, I could talk all day, but 3D is another opportunity as well. So with 3D, I think to Jesse's point as well, if we're producing what's needed, where it's needed, when it's needed, huge opportunity for how we design products of the future. And importantly, we need our industrial designers of the future to start thinking in this way so that future products that we make are maximizing on these types of technologies to minimize waste and create less plastics and importantly, less going back into oceans.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there. I loved watching the Olympics. So I was quite excited to see Melissa's Wu's video earlier, but I saw a lot of the HP video of the fish and the plastic bag, and I thought that was really cool. I love how your laptop is 70% recycled plastic. I think that's fantastic. Thomas, so what are some of the challenges we're thinking about from a university perspective in terms of translating all your incredible research into commercial applications? I know that there's been some issues in Australia, and we'd love to try and see how we can try and get more funding and more commercial uses. And how did you overcome some of your biggest challenge in terms of developing your applications?
Sorry. Thanks for the question. So there are a number of perspectives, I guess. One is the general translation hurdle, and then there's an Australia-specific one. So the general one is always to find, obviously, connection points towards translation industry. And I should say there's a huge change of winds in terms of this whole problematic now. Industry is stepping up, the financial markets are stepping up, insurance companies are not insuring certain types of projects anymore, so they just stop. So there's a really big groundswell of good stuff happening, and into which one can connect as a first up. Australia spends on an OECD level, as are the economies we compete with most strongly, the lowest or second lowest per capita in terms of research and development. So that is clearly a disadvantage to be competitive in the global marketplace. Another one, more general one, is I guess that as an academic, the peer review system is geared towards rewarding intellectual excellence, but not necessarily that combined with a commercial risk-taking element. So that is discounted to zero. And if I want to combine both in a particular application, it's hard to do that. So it's just viewed as, oh well, that's quite commercial, so we don't really need to fund it. That can be done by the private sector. So there's a hurdle. Another hurdle is for academics, especially young academics, the promotion. It's largely driven by publications and conference appearances, etc. Esteem factors of colleagues, and yeah, it's risky if I devote 5 years of my life to make something commercial and it doesn't work. Most things don't work. That's a real big dent in the career path. So that's another disincentive. And finally, I guess from a tax perspective, the government hasn't got settings right, in my view, that really incentivize investors to take risk. In other places like the UK or like Germany, there are big upfront discounts in terms of tax being paid on risky investment, and then also benefits in terms of anything earned, that the tax on that is substantially discounted. And that is a simple thing to do, because really it's not giving money to people, it's saying I will take less money from you if you're successful, which I think is a really good investment and shows a good direction. And a number of countries have got specific areas where they say, right, let's say renewables or viral studies or artificial intelligence. They are areas of importance, and you get these special tax benefits. So the government doesn't pick winners, but it picks areas of priority, and some leadership needs to be given by government, and I think that's a good way to exercise it.
Yeah, we're certainly punching our weight above our weight in terms of all the research that we're doing, and I really hope we will continue to be able to commercially export things. I know that the Hills hoist is very Australian, so we need more great inventions like that.
The internet's pretty good, or the Wi-Fi.
That's right. Yeah, the Wi-Fi too. So Jesse, being American, you've had international experience, which included working for the White House, as mentioned previously. Seems Australia is also leading the way with advanced operations compared to the US and Europe. Can you tell us why this is for Wings?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, in the drone space, Australia is literally years ahead of other countries, including the US, including most of Europe. And typically, it would be those jurisdictions would set aviation policy. Generally, where the drones are made is where the aviation policy is set. But Australia has taken a unique approach. CASA is the agency that oversees the safety of aviation. So whether it's a Qantas or a Virgin plane flying or a drone, that all falls within the remit of CASA. It's a very highly regulated space. And CASA globally has a really good reputation for aviation safety. They have one of the highest safety bars set for aviation. But CASA did something interesting early on as drones were coming up. They said they kept that safety bar high, but they also took a forward-thinking approach, essentially telling industry, if you can prove the safety of your operations of your equipment, we'll consider it, right? And that was a pretty, and furthermore, the framework in which they assess the safety of, say, Wings operations can be applied to over 50 other countries, because safety aviation is generally done within global safety bodies. So as our company, we took a risk and we took a lot of investment. We moved a lot of team over here to do R&D and eventually build up our operations, knowing that if we could meet CASA's safety bar, one day we'd be able to operate here. And that's exactly what happened. So Wing's been operating and doing trials and R&D in Australia for years. And it's just in the past few years that we've launched our commercial operations. But because Australia is so far ahead of the rest of the world, Wing has delivery services running in Europe and America, but by far this is our largest operational setting. Therefore, it's our largest operational investment. I've hosted at our facilities in Canberra and Queensland, I've hosted, probably 15 or 20 different countries. Not other companies, but governments from other countries to come here to say, how is this even happening? It's just not happening to scale in other places like it is here. And furthermore, beyond just the safety regulator, at every level of government, and this spans political party, the Commonwealth government, the state governments in which we operate, even the city governments that host us, they've just had a vision for this. And that vision is more further along than we're seeing in other cities or other states in any other country. So because of that, we've just advanced here more rapidly and more quickly, which means we've invested here a lot more and we've hired here a lot more. But now even some of the practices and the setups that occur here, that's what this will look like for the rest of the world. So our operations in Europe and America kind of mimic what we've put in place here over the years. So and because we've been here, other companies have come here too. There are Australian manufacturers and operators that are really far ahead in what they're doing with drones, beyond delivery, across other areas as well. So it's just one of those areas where I know everybody likes to be world leading, and sometimes different countries might be able to claim that more specifically. But in the drone ecosystem and the use of our past technology, Australia is truly just years ahead of some other countries even we operate in. So and because of that, we do more R&D here. We do more work here. We do more, obviously, we deliver thousands of packages every week here, which just isn't happening anywhere else. So hat tip to Australia in that sense. It's they've done this right. And that actually didn't start necessarily at a political level. That started at a regulatory level. So I think the point the professor was making a moment ago, sometimes the politics of a government, right, might drive the incentives that will facilitate research. In this instance, it was just a forward-thinking regulator that did that. And so a credit to them as well.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. And yeah, and I think
if I could just say, so really we have the intellectual capital in Australia.
Yeah,
we have some of the brightest people in Australia. So it's really about setting the framework to make full use of it.
Don't be fooled by my accent. So I'm a permanent resident. My wife's Australian. I've lived in Australia. Our pilots are Australian. We're hiring. We're not importing all of our staff from America just because we have a headquarters there. We're hiring locally. I could even give you a great example in Logan City, where it's our biggest operation. At some of the high schools there, you can earn a drone certificate. You can learn commercial drone licensing at the local high school in Logan, which means our pipeline isn't even going beyond. That means some students who are doing weekend work at our facilities, they're working in an advanced field. No other high school student in the world gets that opportunity. It's just they happen to be in our area. In other jurisdictions, we wouldn't have that ecosystem built up, and that aren't, therefore we might not be able to do that R&D work. So it's it's very Australian what's happening here, which we're really proud about as well.
That's amazing. I wish oh, how do we move to Logan and get that experience if I was a high school kid? That would be so awesome. I just want to reiterate to everyone that you can ask questions in the Q&A button if you'd like to ask a question to our panelists, so please do that. I'm sure there's a lot of interesting questions that you can come up with as well. So next, we're actually going to go to some video questions that we have submitted from current University of Sydney students. And our first question is from Sachin and Adam Show.
Hey, I'm Sachin.
And I'm Adam.
Together, we're the Sachin and Adam Show.
We interview leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors to bring their learnings and wisdom to younger people.
Now, we started this podcast 2 years ago, and we've had the honor to talk to over 60 guests. And a theme that keeps coming up over and over again is the rising tide of the tech ecosystem in Australia.
So there's a lot happening at the big end of town with funding rounds and acquisitions, but we're really interested for university students. How can we incentivize people that are just starting their career to go into startups and the technology field?
And to add
Okay, I think we got cut off from that video. The question of the Sachin and Adam Show is they'd like to ask how we can incentivize people who's just starting in their career to go into startups and the technology field. If I think back at myself, I went through my undergrad almost 20 years ago, and there's a limited amount of startups in a non-existent eco-environment back then. And you could only really go into graduate roles at big corporations. But now I think we have a very strong innovation ecosystem, as discussed just now. And there's been very strong funding as well. I think there's a KPMG report that said there's $2.5 billion that was raised for startups in the past financial year. So the question that I have for the panel is, would you recommend this as a good move for students to move into, and also as an impact for planet Earth as well? So who would like to take that question first?
Well, I've done 6, and 4 are still alive, so maybe.
Yeah.
So,
very valid.
A lot of my students are move through from my laboratory into the company and have actually, medium and even long-term jobs in that. I think having success in startups and showing that as a viable alternative or viable option for students will encourage students to do it. And I guess for students looking, have a look at an academic, if they're at the university, who is sort of trying to do things in terms of getting out there, applying their technology. But also there are lots of meetings around all of this, and there is a Tech 23, etc. There are lots of startup kind of hubs, and they have many activities. So students should not be shy, but actually go there, network, and get the vibe and get the excitement, and just join the journey.
I agree. You can just start off even as an intern and just get that experience, So any experience that you get accumulated skills, and that's going to set you up for life. So I incredibly agree with you there, Thomas, that to go and network at some of these organizations, which are lacking money, but they definitely will teach you lots of valuable skills.
Maybe if I can add to that,
Yeah.
Lucy. I think in terms of first of all, I think to Thomas and Jesse's comments, I'm really optimistic about actually the role that Australia and innovation from Australia can play on a worldwide basis. And we've got examples where we've got Australian startups who we're actually already integrating into HP portfolio. And this is once again all Australian technology, and it gets integrated into what we're doing on a global basis. So I think there's that opportunity. I think the other thing I always emphasize to all my team here in HP in Australia is, it's very easy just to throw money at problems and things like that. But when you really put good thinking behind things, that's when you really start to create that exponential opportunity. And we're starting to change the way, we're looking at the world from, it's very easy to just go on. And as you mentioned before with the Olympics campaign, our entire campaign was about sustainable impact. It wasn't about cool gadgetry and tech. It was actually around, if we as a company are seen to do the right thing will be rewarded by consumers in the longer term. And so for our innovators out there, I think you should be very confident that multinationals, local Australian businesses are going to want to fund good ideas. And that's particularly what investors are holding companies to account. And certainly sustainable tech is really resonating in the worldwide market. And the great ideas that create sustainable tech are really going to be the innovation and the lifeblood of the future. And the great thing about the last 18 months, if there are positives to take out of it, is we've democratized what we're doing from a worldwide perspective, from a technology, because we've got this hybrid world that, we're tapping into the US on a morning and we're getting into Europe in the night. And of course, during the day, we're talking to Asia. So, we should take advantage of that. And certainly, I know companies such as HP are going to want to continue to fund new ideas and inspiration for the future.
Yeah, I guess
you want to add?
Sure. What I would say, especially probably at a university level, is start to fall into working with the right people now, whether it's a big company or a small company or a small startup or an immersed research project. These become long nights, they become weekends, the work becomes immersive. And if it's a great idea that's innovative, that becomes really exciting. But, I think some of even the biggest startups or the smallest ones, just start to, if these meetings are happening and groups are forming and internships are happening, start to find the types of people or even the people that you'd like to take that innovative journey with. My background started before I did policy. I started in politics, and in a campaign background, same thing. I did well because I fell into people who believed the same things I did, and we worked towards that goal. And therefore, I didn't mind if I was working late with those people. And same even with the company we're with now. So I'd say the ideas are important. The people are equally, if not more important. So start to make those connections now as you start that startup journey, if that's the route you're going to take.
Yeah, fantastic. Connections are definitely important, and just get out there and follow your passion. I think that's really important as well. So what do you value? If you're interested about planet Earth, what are some of these type of startups that you can really help in terms of sustainability tech? So we have another question from the University of Sydney's Innectus Society. If we can play that video now.
Hi. We are Enactus, a society of 65 members where we work together to create startups to help create a better world.
Currently, we have 12 startups that each address a different UN Sustainable Development Goal. But often, we, like many other successful startups and businesses, struggle to balance social impact and financial pressures.
So our question to Mike today is, how do you balance the financial pressures from stakeholders while also ensuring you create social or environmental impact in your company?
Right, so that's always a hard question. How do you balance making money and also creating social environmental impact at the same time? And how do you talk about this to your organization? So Mike, do you have a comment there?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing is you've got to have a long-term view in the way that you look at this, and also a short-term, you hold yourself to account in the short term. I think, as I mentioned before, that people are now voting consumers are voting with their feet to get companies to do the right thing in terms of their sustainable impact. So it's a bit of a self-serving opportunity for consumers, have got the power of knowledge now in terms of the way that they research things. If as a brand from end to end, you can be seen to be doing the right thing, ultimately that's going to go really well for you. A lot of these things, are really, it's beneath the surface of the iceberg in many ways. So people don't really know in terms of, what companies are really doing beneath the surface. But the great thing is, I think that the innovation opportunity is that if you don't innovate with a view to sustainability, that it will be at your peril in the longer term as such. And so I think that certainly from how do we view this? I think we view this from a long-term perspective. I think employees really want to be bought in and believing in companies, and certainly people coming into companies in the future want to be part of that journey. And the more that you can get all of those stakeholders aligned, from the consumer right through to the shareholders of the companies, you create a win-win. And I think it's an opportunity for everyone to continue to get better.
Yeah, completely agree. Does anyone else want to jump in there?
I think we're good.
Thomas, Jesse? All right. Oh.
Well, just in terms of time, I think there are a few questions in the Q&A. So
Yeah, sure. We'll get to that. Just lastly, I think final question is to talk about the future. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about, the future of sustainable innovation. So Thomas, do you believe Australia's focus on renewables is due to a natural advantage? And love to hear your thoughts more on that.
Yeah, so Australia has got some amazing natural advantages, and I guess you can hear I'm German, and Jesse is from the States, so we love living here. So it's amazing advantages, but also, of course, if you want something, you just go digging in Australia and you'll find it. So with the new technologies, we'll just go and dig maybe something different, or we'll think and realize, well, we've got quite a lot of sun, don't we, and a fair bit of wind as well. So I think absolutely we have probably a unique constellation of a high-tech society, a stable government, a good money supply, a technology accepting society, and massive renewable resources. So taking solar and wind to use that to make hydrogen, for example, then use that hydrogen as a chemical input to beneficiate, to upgrade ores, to much improve the value that we're getting for our minerals that we're digging out of the ground, is an obvious thing to do. And it will generate wealth, it will generate jobs. My view is the new kind of jobs that we are getting from a renewables powered industry. It's both the renewables coming online as well as using the renewables. There will be so many jobs that the mining jobs that might be lost in terms of the coal, there'll be far too many jobs to be filled by that cohort. So I see very, very positive future if Australia really realizes what it can be, which is an economic superpower in terms of renewables, both in energy and using that energy for exports.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there, especially around the transition of jobs. Like you can't, I think it'd be quite so exciting in terms of all the new things that will happen. Jesse, just also very quickly with you, other things you think drones will be used for as an innovation that'll be good for the environment for the future as well, for planet Earth?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of instances, drones can replace helicopters. Just think about that for a second. Something that weighs thousands and thousands of kilograms versus just tens of kilograms. It not only makes it safer, it makes it more efficient, it makes it more quick. For a lot of the uses that the professor mentioned, doing the inspection, if using wind as an example, if those turbines have to be inspected, using a drone to do that inspection versus climbing that steel or using a helicopter or other means, it becomes a no-brainer. It just becomes safer and quicker, more efficient and more energy friendly. And Australia is leading the way in that too, because of the same framework that allows us to operate. It does give an opportunity for a wide range of drone use. They're using drones for shark detection and life-saving on the beaches. They're using drones at mine sites for, a trip that might take an hour by car could take 5 minutes by drone if you have to go all the way down, as an example, or moving something to a ship offshore. Australia is a big island, so any marine use case is an obvious one. So I think there's just endless possibility here. And it does create those new jobs. It does save a lot of money. It does make things a lot more safe. So I think it's just one of those technologies that with each year, these things from a range of uses and reasons will just become more common. And we're well on that path here in Australia.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I'd love to be a drone operator at some point. It's part of my job description. It'd be awesome. And Mike, do you believe the ocean will have greater focus for sustainable innovation? Any last thoughts as well?
Yeah, look, I think it's very obvious. The impacts are huge, particularly for Australia. As I said, we've got such a 72% of the Earth and 50% of our oxygen comes from our ocean. And I think, on the subject of drones, even with drone technology now mapping our oceans into the future, we're learning a new universe in that regard, in terms of what is flowing into the oceans and how can we be better upstream in terms of improving our processes and the way that we're doing the right things literally upstream. I think we've certainly got a lot of pressure to get acting, but I'm very, very confident that initiatives that we've got with Ocean Impact Organisation, who knows, it might be the next tech innovation that's going to make a really big difference in the future. So very, very excited to see what we're going to get out of that.
Yeah, completely. So we want to answer some Q&A. So Nick, do you have what's the best Q&A questions that we want to ask our panelists?
Yeah, sure thing. A very popular one right off the back there is from Alex, and it's directed towards Jesse. Alex is asking what the process, challenges, and successes were to get the drone trial accepted.
Yeah, so, it takes time to invent the technology for sure, but when something's brand new, if you live in Logan or in Canberra where you deliver, it's probably likely you've never seen a drone before. And now, on any given day, you might see dozens of drones operating in your neighborhood. So there's a real human element to this, although it's an autonomous system. We invested a lot of time up front in answering questions for the tens of thousands of people who live in the areas we operate in before we started operating. It means doing pop-ups with our drone. And the questions people have are totally reasonable. Is this safe? What does this look like? Is it going to be noisy? Think of the types of questions where if you live on a street and all of a sudden there's drones operating there regularly, what questions would you have? So we invest a lot of time up front in answering those questions, which isn't a technological issue. That's a very old-fashioned issue to solve for, but a crucial piece for how we operate. Now that we've been in Logan for years, whether you like drones or when we have thousands of customers there, we operate in over 20 suburbs. People know what this is now, which is great. But it took a long time to get there. So that's a process we'll have to keep scaling as we grow beyond just, a city the size of Logan. Logan's interesting. It's the 10th largest LGA in Australia. It's kind of resembles a lot of cities across the country, but it's not a huge CBD. It's not a small regional town. It's just kind of that in the middle, big growing suburban area. So doing that, I think other operators will have to take the same path. They're going to have to answer the questions before they start operating, because you don't want people living in a community where something is unknown, that's happening at scale.
It must be a very difficult juggling act for all the stakeholders. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Our next question comes from Robert, and it's directed towards Thomas, I think. They're asking, which battery technology do you think will crack the home storage market, or EVs fill the role of home storage for solar power? And if you could, before, just explain what EVs are too.
Okay. So EVs are electric vehicles, and home storage is connecting it up to your solar. And I guess there are two competing schools of thought. You could use your car to stand, in a garage, and that could be your backup for your home system. And especially if you've got two cars, you can drive one, and one stays at home. Or the other way is to have a dedicated home system. And it's difficult to make money and make it commercial to have a battery the way they are now with a solar system. If you have a good grid connection in terms of the electricity price you pay, it's very difficult to make that work. Feedback tariffs used to be the thing that would make it work, but that's being wound down because that was taken up too enthusiastically. There are battery technologies, and I have to admit my one will be able to do that, to come in at a lower price because of longer lifetime and higher safety. That I think will flip that around, and homes can actually go off grid and do that in an economically viable fashion.
That would be fantastic. That would be really, really interesting to see. Mike, I'll finalize the last question here is directed towards you. They're saying there's so many great ideas for how to reduce waste. They're wondering why it takes so long for these ideas to be applied by companies in practice, and how could this be sped up?
Yeah, very good question. The good news is it is speeding up. So just to give you an example, I can touch on numbers. If you were to ask me about this question, how many products are for sale in Australia from HP that have got recycled plastics, it would be less than 10 only 2 years ago. Now we're sort of over 50, and before you know it, it'll be into the 70s. The other thing, so I think that's really opportunistic is, we're looking to the segment of one in the future. And the way that you do that is from a manufacturing thinking and process through your analytics right down to, I guess, the fourth industrial revolution. We will be able to customize whether or not it's cars, printers, you name it, through 3D printing into the future. Our own 3D printer itself, over 60% of the plastic parts are actually printed by the printer itself. So if you start to think about that, that means the whole complexity of an industrial production line to make products is now just literally, we just print them as we need them. And I know, once again, for drone technology of the future, that 3D is going to be a really important part. So as we get into consumerization, you'll see from product packaging, sourcing, right through to the consumer, and then circular economy. A lot's happening around as a service as we sort of start to talk about. And then back to that segment of one, you'll be buying your footwear, your, you name it, your bike, your drone, everything in the future, because you've actually configured it the way you want, and it'll be a unique product in the world. So lots happening around that, and then very, very exciting space from an innovation standpoint.
Thank you so much for these questions. We're almost out of time. I just really want to thank the panel today. I'd love to thank Professor Thomas Maschmeyer and his amazing insights on renewables at Sydney and the great work that you're doing at the University of Sydney. I'd love to thank Mike Boyle of HP, and I really hope there's a fantastic, you get amazing ideas coming out of the Ocean Impact Incubator, and we'll definitely be able to implement them, and it'll make a huge impact to our oceans. I'd love to thank Bessie Suskin as well from Google's Wing. And I'm going to go up to Logan myself, and I want to go order a coffee with these drones. I cannot wait to do that as soon as the borders open. And my name is Lucy Lynn. I'm the founder of Forestlyn, and I'm really happy to be hosting the Innovation for Planet Earth. And I'll throw it back to Nick. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucy. A massive thank you for moderating this session as well. I think it was very insightful, and it's fantastic to see how passionate each of you are in your own individual areas. Thank you very much to our viewers, and please join us for the Your Wellbeing Innovated session, which starts at 2:15 p.m. And that has Natasha Munasingh, who is the director of Franked. We have the CEO of Batia, Nicholas Brown, the CEO of Pioneer and Genesis winner 2021, Daniel Owen Whitford, and finally, comedian and mathematician, Adam Spencer. You can use the Zoom link in the chat to join. Thank you all very much, and have a lovely evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.